thanks so much for watching Making Healthcare Work for You, Different Perspectives and Empowering Solutions. I'm Stephanie Fields. I'm joined by Dr. Apoorv Gupta, and today we are welcoming Darlene Cunha, who is a nurse executive for Trinity Health. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It's my pleasure.
I cannot wait to talk to you and share with our viewers the amazing way that you are thinking about nursing and specifically doing it through the lens of Caritas and the principles with that. So, why don't you start by telling us why this became such a tremendously important thing in your life from the age of 4?
I'm one of 7 children, and we used to walk up Dorchester Avenue, which is a town in Boston, Massachusetts, to go to church every Sunday morning. And then we would cross over and walk back down the hill going home. And as we were doing so, we would pass this beautiful statue up on a hill, which was outside a school of nursing, Labouré College of Nursing, which was part of Carney Hospital. And I remember stopping one day and asking my father, Daddy, why does she hold her hands out like this? And getting down on one knee, looking me square in the eye, holding my hands and saying, well, sweetheart, she holds every patient in the palm of her hands. And I just never forgot that. It resonated with me. Years later, when I was looking to go to nursing schools, I ended up going to Labouré College to start my journey and my education in this beautiful art of human caring. And it really came full circle because my dad ended up passing at Carney Hospital, and they held him in the palm of their hands every step of the way with the care. And that has really held deeply in my heart the power of compassion and love and caring, whether you're well or ill. That journey is so important, and how we care for one another with loving kindness has stayed with me ever since.
Wow, it's so touching, Darlene. I just feel the more times I hear that and the extended version of that, the more it deeply resonates within me. So thank you for taking the time to articulate that. One thing I was wondering as you were sharing is when your dad got readmitted to Carney Hospital and how you could share with him that they were holding him in loving kindness and caring. What is it that actually allows that to happen at places where it is happening, and why are we maybe sometimes struggling to perceive that as patients or deliver that as caregivers?
I think we all bring different experiences to our work, right? And how we enter into a patient's room, I think we have to remember that it is an honor and a privilege to be at someone's bedside. And those experiences that we have both personally and professionally come into play. And being able to just sometimes sit in silence, being able to hold a patient's hand and share with them that moment of care and love and compassion is such a privilege. And for those that may struggle with that, my goal is to help bring that full circle, is to help them see the power of that moment, that micro caring moment, and how much power that brings to that individual and to them personally. You can't help but be affected when you see the power of your care, your compassion actually extended to another human being. And when we call that out, when we recognize that, it helps to reaffirm why we do this work, why we care so deeply for the art of human caring, right? Nursing, healthcare in general, taking care of others is just such a privilege, and it's something I hold very deeply inside me.
It's something that clearly is part of your DNA. And obviously through your family, the way that your dad took such care to explain that to you, getting down to your level, that's something he could have easily just addressed. Oh, that's, that's how they take care of patients. Patients are important to them. But he didn't. He made it an experience for you, which you're clearly doing for everybody else at this point. And so you've said a few things. I mean, you've said a million things. I'm just astounded by your story and the way that you think about your work. But you said you don't see these as challenges. You see as an opportunity, that everybody has the power to make change, and that the way to handle that when you see somebody who may not necessarily realize that they do have this passion or that they are making that change is to call them out in a loving way. And so, how do you help people realize that this isn't something that you have to be naturally? I mean, you're like Snow White, but for patients. How do you help people realize that even if that's not the way that they are, or they had a bad day, because everybody's human, they can still bring their authentic self to work, which is a key to this loving system, loving organization, and they can make that choice.
It's interesting because I will also share that I've recently been taking care of my husband, who's been quite ill. And we've been at a pretty large institution in Boston, Massachusetts. And the group of nurses that cared for him just truly exhibited every single caring Caritas process. There's 10 of them. Yet they didn't know they were doing it. From the housekeeper to the nurses to the phlebotomists, because remember, caring isn't just for nurses, right? The art of human caring is everybody that touches that patient in some way that makes them feel important or special. The housekeeper who came in and would sing because my husband loved music and he was so sad, and she brought joy to his room just through singing. And he would actually sing with her. Now he can't sing, but it was just such a beautiful moment to walk into. I had to stop at the door and just not interrupt that moment, right? There were nurses that clearly I could hear them talking about events in their personal life that were challenging at the moment, sick children, just challenges. And yet when they entered that room, they were beautiful and didn't even realize the power that they had for each caring moment with my husband. So I took time to call them out on it. I'd say, do you know that you were the healing environment today? Do you know what you did? Caritas number 8. Or do you know that you gave me hope? You actually gave me hope when my husband's health was failing. That's miracles, right? That's Caritas 10. They didn't even realize the power of their presence and what they were doing, because they said, well, we do this all the time. This is who we are. I said, this is who you are at your core, but your heart shows through. So even though you have the skill at the end of your hands, you wrapped it in love. And that's what you have to remember. So even when you're having a bad day, you can still bring that compassion and care and love to every single moment with a patient and with each other. I watch them, support each other. Caritas number 1, love and kindness, right? So when you think about every interaction we have, whether we're at a patient's bedside, in a hospital, or in a community, we have the power within us to change every moment into something special. And that's sort of what I want to convey.
I think another side benefit of that, it's your question, but to add a comment real quick, that I think sometimes when you have these things, you said the one person had a sick child, when there are things that you may not necessarily feel like you can control in your own life, them having the power to then go in and do something positive in someone else's life may give them that hope for themselves and maybe the ability to feel a bit more empowered than they otherwise might.
Well, that's that camaraderie, right? We help each other, right? That's human, as humans, we're wired to be together. We're wired for connectivity, right? That's what we're here to do, is to support one another. So if you're having a bad day, I'll give you a real tangible example that just recently happened. A nurse was due to transfer a patient to another patient care unit, a step down unit, right? And she had done all the care and she had given report. She couldn't physically take that patient to that unit because just a few months earlier, her son had passed away on that unit. And she just couldn't bring herself to go to that unit. She wasn't ready. Her colleagues stepped right in, put their arms around her and said, "We got you. We got you. That's Caritas." And they physically transported that patient to the appropriate setting and went back and said, "Take a moment. Let's go for a walk. Let's just get you in a good space." I was so taken aback by the love that was shared in the community of that group of nurses, that group of people that said, "We got you." 3 words, "We got you." Right? If we did more of that in our community, more of that in our relationships, "We got you," it's all good. Just imagine the ripple effect that would have, right? I mean, think about what Mother Teresa represented, right? Just one small act of kindness is a ripple effect for the next and the next. That's what we have to do. We have to be that ripple, right? It's not always perfect. It's not always easy, but all it takes is effort. It just takes wanting to make that change, and we can do it.
I'm so touched by these string of stories, Darlene. It's really overpowering just to hear about in an incredibly uplifting way. Thank you for sharing these. I can only imagine the impact this is going to make on our audience, who are also going to be really blown away just to hear this. I have a few thoughts coming to me. Maybe I'll string them together in a couple of two-part question. When you mentioned this large hospital in Boston where your husband has been, getting his care, and how remarkable you found that the care to be consistently across the board, nurses and techs and environmental support people, everyone. I guess the question that comes to me is, how did that come to be? That culture is so uniformly that way, all through and through. When you ask the individuals, they said, "We're just like this." They couldn't quite pinpoint anything, so it doesn't sound like there was any particular training program or such. So did this hospitals just somehow recruit for people like this? Have they somehow trained them to be that way? Is the culture overall supportive in some way of this kind of behavior? So that's kind of one part of the question. The second part of the question that I want to tie back is to the work you're doing at Trinity Health, and how are you going about trying to make this systematic, recognizing that all of us have this inside us and have the capability, but then we're not always practicing and delivering at that level. So what is it that can be done to make this more of a systematic culture?
I love it. I love the 2-part question of her. So when I talk about this particular organization in Boston, when you enter that nursing unit, you feel it. It's you're in a loving organization. You feel it. And how do you feel it? When you walk onto the unit, people acknowledge you. They're not looking down, they're looking up. They're saying, "Hello, can I help you find your way? Do you know where you're going? I have the time to get you there," right? When we think of all the work that was done years ago by Quint Studer and actually taking a moment to stop and pause and help the next person. It is also emulated by the leadership. I watch the manager of the unit, I watched the director of the unit, and I watched the chief nursing officer of the organization, who I came to know quite well. But they model the behavior. The first thing they do when they round, and I'm always watching, right? Because I'm listening and learning and wanting to grab onto beautiful opportunities to expand my knowledge. But the first thing they say is, "How are you doing? how's everything going? Do you have everything you need today? Were there any challenges, anything I can help you with? So the first thing they're asking is, how are you as a person, as a colleague? How are things going? They acknowledge family. So how's the baby? How's your first year of marriage going? You were on vacation. Share with me, how was it? So it's that connection before content. I always go back to that, right? When you can connect with somebody personally first so that they feel like they're an important part of your conversation, and then you sort of delve into something a little bit more deeper, you resonate with them. They want to be part of whatever it is that you're asking and sharing with them, right? So you're connecting with them first. How are you? How's your day going? Do you have everything you need? And then, how are you doing? How's everything going with the family? It is a sense of, I'm just as important as the work that I'm doing. And when you can model that from leadership all the way down to the front line, people don't see it as separate. They see it as their culture. And so they emulate that culture. They want to be part of it. And it's interesting because when I ask them, how long have you been on this unit? How many years have you been here? Oh, I've been here 27 years. I've been here 23 years. I've been here, 9 years. And then there was a young girl. I said, well, I know you haven't been here 23 years. And she said, no, she said, I started here as a tech, graduated nursing school, and immediately knew I wanted to work here. And I didn't care what shift I worked. I just knew I wanted to be part of this community. Wow. Right? Like, wow. So if you can build that, right? It's sort of like build it and they'll come, right? That's exactly what they've done there. It is a community of love, of compassion, of education, of wanting to be part of something bigger and feeling like you're delivering something bigger. So when I look at the work I do with Trinity, it is the same thing. I know I belong to something special because from the chief nursing officer and the chief executive officer all the way down, those reflections start there. And we bring that community of people together through our faith, our communities, our extracurricular activities, our roles in the organization. The lines are blurred. It's not you belong in this lane and I belong in this lane. There are no lanes. We all know what our clinical area of expertise is, but we all know that we can rely on each other and call on each other and expect that there's support and love and respect for each other. That to me is what builds a Caritas community.
It's unbelievable. And as you were talking, my own story, I had a high risk pregnancy. My daughter, I had preeclampsia that turned to HELP, and my daughter had to be born 3 months early, where she then spent 3 months in the NICU. The first month she was sedated on a jet ventilator on fentanyl and Ativans. We couldn't hold her for 4 weeks. She was born at 27 and 6. And so there were a lot of harrowing days there, most notably when I looked at the neonatologist and I said, listen, I can get through this, but I need to know that she can go home. And she looked me right in my face and she goes, I can't tell you if she's going home. But she didn't say it like that. She just said it like matter of fact. And I was like, no, nope. So I went home.
Oh my goodness.
I went back the next day and said, listen, I understand the gravity of the situation. I'm going to be here in rounds every day. I've told you I'm not going to Google what this is. She had pulmonary interstitial emphysema. And I said, I'm not going to Google this because I have no context. You do. You've done this. You're the experts. I'm going to let you handle it. And I said, so I'm going to be here and I'm going to be her consistency and her advocate, but I don't want to hear anything negative anymore. I said, she was born at 27 and 6. She can't produce her own blood yet. That would be insanity if she did. She can't do it. It's not possible. I said, so that's not a bad day. We expect that. That's a busy day if she has a blood transfusion. She has 3 x-rays. That means she had a lot going on. I said, I want to hear things without being sugar-coated, but within within a non-negative framing. And so they completely turned around how they talked about things, and she needed a pick line, and boy was I mad because they don't typically call people for rounds. They did the first day, told me I could be part of it, and then I couldn't. I had a C-section, I couldn't drive yet. And I was furious. So somebody took me there. I was down there and they started talking to me. The lady on the phone was the one who started talking to me about the pick line. And I mean, I was level 500 to begin with. And then she's telling me this scary stuff. And she won me over. She's like, look, I know this is scary. I know this is terrifying. I know you have to sign this stuff and it's, horrible. You don't know any of this. It's all new. But we have you. We've done this. We can handle it. And we're going to have the best person come in. So this other lady came in on her day off just to do my daughter's pick line. Because she said, if it was my daughter, this is who I'd want to do the pick line. And then, like you said about staying in their own lanes, the poor of us heard this story 1,000 times. But my daughter had one day where she had really bad retractions. And I said to a different neonatologist who I loved very much, I said, can you please go look at her? And he did. And, her heart rate was ridiculous. And then this other nurse that she just has this crazy bond with my daughter looked at the neonatologist and said, Jersey, give me that baby. And she took him from him. And she sat down in the chair, started singing to my daughter in Romanian. And he said her heart rate dropped 30 points in seconds. And he called me and he said, listen, your daughter's fine. She's going to do great. But let me tell you, don't lose Mihaela. That's your girl. And so it's still, sometimes they haven't seen each other now in 5 years. But when I have a question, I'll be like, I need to talk to Mihaela because Mihaela just gets her. And then turning back to the actual work of Apoorv's question, how do you systematize this? When I worked at Benefit Focus, which is now part of Voya, but a software company in South Carolina, I worked there. There were so many things that were basic, and it was like, we don't accept anything below the bar. There is no average. Everything is excellence. That's who we are. That's what we do. And it started with everything. The second anybody walked into any one of our buildings on that campus, whoever was at the front desk said, hey, I wanted to let you know, here's the restrooms. This person that you're meeting with is going to, because we already had you on the list. We knew you were coming. We knew who you were going to go see. We offered you water and we told you where the bathroom was. So you knew everything, but it was that basic type of thing that provide anticipatory service, and together was another value, which was not a mistake. So I think so many times, and from what we're hearing from you, is that they're not things that you have to buy or whatever. It's like you said, you shared with us before the call that it's having these moments of reflection before meetings. So why don't you tell us about that and about your Pay It Forward campaign, which is fantastic. And I just can't imagine the way that you were lighting up the hospital with happiness through this program.
So a couple of things I want to comment on because I just have to with my heart. So first of all, my love and compassion to you and your daughter. And I pray that she's on a journey of wellness towards really good health. But that, we don't realize the ripple effect that one person can have. And I'm just going to share one thing with you and then I'll answer your questions. When my dad first got sick, I was a teenager. And back then in the hospital, you had to be 14 years old to get in, right? I don't know if you remember those ages. I might be dating myself, but they didn't have, first of all, they didn't have 24-hour visiting hours. You had to be a certain age, 14. And visiting hours started at like noon and went to 4. So it was a very short period of time. But I used to sneak in. I used to go in, and I was rather tall for my age at the time, and I went like I knew what I was doing, even though I didn't. And I would sit in his room, and my dad had an anoxic event. So he was unable to verbalize or talk. For people that don't know what that is, anoxia, lack of oxygen to the brain. So he was in a vegetative state, and they would set him up in a chair, and they led us to believe that he was going to be rehabilitated. But I would go in, and I was very close to my dad, and I'd sit and I'd chit chat with him and I'd hold his hand. But nurses would come in and doctors would come in and other healthcare personnel would come in, and they would never acknowledge my presence. They would walk over to him, take care of him, do what needed to be done for him, and walk out of the room. And I would sit there, and afraid to say anything because I was 13 and a half, not quite 14, and was afraid they might throw me out. So I just sat there and I would cry silently until this one nurse came in, and I'll never forget her. And she put her hands on my shoulder and she said, "Sweetheart, hi." She introduced herself and she said, "This is your dad." And she proceeded to tell me what was going on with him. But then she did something else. She got down at my level and hugged me and said, "It's okay." But, I always tell, I taught for a while, but I used to, when I trained new nurses, I would say, remember that the family is an extension of that patient. You have to take care of the family. They're just as important. And so your story resonated with me because she took care of you, right? She put her arms around you, even if it was through your daughter, right? We cannot forget the power of a hug or silence or a touch. It conveys so much. So my heart goes out to you, and I'm so glad you found her and that she was such a beautiful addition to the health and wellness of your child. So how do we pay it forward? How does Trinity live this? Not only do we live it through reflections, whether they're a story, a poem, a prayer, a song, every meeting starts with a reflection. And we're assigned a time that we can do it, or we can volunteer for that meeting or a huddle. And what our leaders do, that are frontline leaders, our managers, they ask staff, would you like to lead the reflection today? And a staff member will step up and they'll share a moment that happened with a patient or a family member, or something that happened at home that was just wonderful and resonates about love and compassion. But Trinity does this from the boardroom to the front line. And they live it and believe it. And for me, I go back and I think about, the 100 Lives campaign that we did around patient safety, and how are we really going to be a country that really supported safety events and making sure that our patients and families stayed safe. I look at Caritas the same way. How do we get this sort of grassroots movement going? I mean, Jean Watson, who's the nursing theorist around Caritas, has been doing this since the late 70s. It was the nursing theory program that my college had adopted. So I'm very familiar, and I'm a certified Caritas coach. So I believe in it. I love it. I breathe it. So how do we bring it forward? Well, there's these little postcards that Jean Watson has created, and it says, maybe this one moment at this one time is the very reason we're put on this earth, right, at this time. And so I take those postcards with me when I'm on a unit. And if I see somebody and I witness them doing something beautiful, simple, small, I write on the back what they did and tell them how they lived Caritas. I give them that card along with a blank one. And I tell them they've got to now pay it forward. And when you start to actually see that take shape, and they walk around with that card, it means something to them, right? It's sort of like when you get that beautiful card from your boss and you put it on your refrigerator, right? It's the same sort of thing, right? Somebody recognized something special that I did. And we all want that. So I take that same sort of approach. I want to call it out and actually do it. I will go back and tell you that hospital that was taking care of my husband in such a beautiful way. I put together a beautiful Caritas framed picture, if you will, of all the Caritas processes on one side, but on the other side is how they lived it. I gave them real life examples. It is now hanging on that unit as a reminder of the beautiful work that they do each and every day. So if this isn't just within Trinity, right? We have to live it every day. It has to be who we are. It's our community within ourselves and our community at large. Caritas is Caritas is meant to be shared. It's not meant to be honed as just your own personal attribute. We want it to be everyone's attribute, right? So that's how you pay it forward. Call each other out on it. Tell them, beautiful thing that you just did in that room. I just witnessed you do this. How special is that? And even if we've lost our way, we've had some moral injury from the pandemic and maybe something personal in our lives, when someone lights that spark, that little magical spark that creates the next magical spark. We're only as good as the stories we share. If we don't share our stories, the spark goes away. We got to share them.
I feel like you need some sort of like a badge reel thing where you can put stickers of like a little flame for when people get these caring things, they can peel it off and put it on there.
It's hard to think of a final question at this stage. I mean, I think the stories are so powerful, Darlene. Stephanie, your story as well, interspersed in between there. It just kind of makes it all really come home that ultimately the reason for doing all of this is that they're people that we're caring for. It's not just a patient and their family, but these are real people with connected to real people, and they need the love and the compassion. That's an important part of their healing. So really, really just hits home with all the stories you shared. I guess maybe despite that, I guess I'll ask my final question we know that it's about the individual, but at the same time, all of us working in healthcare realize that there's a lot of pressures on the executives and leaders and everyone else to also deliver tangible, measurable results. So I guess, Darlene, even having said that, from one side of my mouth, so the question I ask from the other side of my mouth is, does all of this add up in anything measurable that you're able to see at Trinity Health or anywhere else to demonstrate that the collective power of this incredible, moments that we can share with others to say, hey, this is why you need to do it?
Yeah, so great question, because we're just looking at those measurements, right? Our leading and lagging indicators to really show not only the great work that we're doing collectively around policies and procedures, but if we've tied every policy and procedure to a Caritas process. So at the top of the policy and procedure document, there's a Caritas process attached to it, how it relates to the art of human caring. So that's the first thing, right? And so then you start to look, when you think about patient experience, when you think about colleague experience, when you think about recruitment and retention, what do our numbers look like? Well, we're already seeing it go up, right? So colleague experience is going up. Questions around, are you thinking about leaving the organization? Down. Colleagues that want to stay because we're surrounding them with opportunities for growth through education and engagement and committee work and shared governance, right? Really spreading how we actually do this work. We look at patient experience. Patient experience, we know, can be lagging because we have to hope that there's surveys that come through and that they've responded. But we do more than that. We actually round on the floors and get real-time feedback. Whether it's positive or negative, we have an opportunity for rapid cycle improvement. Sometimes it's perception. Perception's reality, right? So how do we change that? What could we have done differently? So we're looking at those scores. We look at census. Do patients want to come to our organizations, right? What is the feedback about what we can be doing to help within the community? Because Caritas extends into the community too. So our community work is growing and growing on how we're giving back. And that speaks volumes. So when we look at nurse sensitive indicators as well as those sort of quantitative indicators, we're seeing tremendous strides, and we know that it's wrapped around Caritas.
Beautiful. Wow.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so, so much. This was remarkable.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you all for watching.
You're a treasure to all of us. Thank you so much for being here today and for bringing this work into the world. Thank you.
My heart. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.